Welcome to the Coin Stories podcast, where we talk about investing, hard money, Bitcoin, and how technology is revolutionizing the global economy. I'm Natalie Brunell, and I'm here to learn with you. So this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. None of the discussions should constitute as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. Make sure you're subscribed to my page so you don't miss out on any new content. This show is made possible through partnerships with companies I trust, and I'm very picky about who I partner with. So I hope you take the time to listen to the ad reads throughout the show. First up, Swan. I partnered with Swan because it is a Bitcoin-only company that is focused on helping people save for their future and self-custody their Bitcoin. Swan can help you start a direct deposit to take advantage of Bitcoin as a savings technology and learn how to take it off the exchange. Swan also offers retirement planning with an IRA, tax loss harvesting, and a white glove private client service. I use Swan to dollar cost average, and I deposit a little bit every day that's equivalent to what I might spend on a meal so that I add to my future nest egg and lower my yearly cost basis. Swan Studios produces my hard money news reports, simplifying Bitcoin for mass audiences and documenting Bitcoin adoption around the world. To learn more and get $10 in free Bitcoin, head to swanbitcoin.com/Natalie Brunell. All right, next up, Bitcoin Conference 2024. The world's largest Bitcoin event is headed to Nashville next year. Early bird tickets are now available, and this is the lowest cost you'll be able to secure for the conference all year. And if you use the code HODL, HODL, you'll get an extra 10% off. So come join us for 3 great days of networking events, panels, keynotes, workshops, and more. You never know what big name might be announced when tickets are much, much higher in price. Head to b.tc/conference and use the code HODL. I'll see you there. All right, it's time for the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. A very special episode focusing on the future of AI. And I'm so excited to speak with this guest, someone I follow on Twitter very, very closely, Brian Roemmele. He is an artificial intelligence researcher and an entrepreneur. You have to follow him on Twitter. I'm just so fascinated with all your work. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Natalie. It's been an amazing time these last few weeks, and especially these last few months in AI. And it's really an honor to be here.
Thank you. There's so much to talk about, but I want to get to know you a little bit more because, I think that will inform why you're so passionate about artificial intelligence. So can you tell us where you're from, a little bit about your upbringing and what got you so passionate about this field?
Absolutely. I started in New Jersey, around an area near Princeton called Flemington. Spent a lot of time in the Princeton, New Brunswick, Short Hills corridor of technology and pharmaceuticals in the era I was growing up. And that exposed me to a whole lot of science, technology, and research in general. Bell Laboratories was a big thing at that era. And I ran across a lot of researchers at Princeton, where I spent a lot of time as a child, way before college days. I assumed that I would become a physicist. I really loved physics. I wanted the world to be rational, binary, black and white, easy to discern. So that drew me into technology. Little did I know, the world is a billion times 10 shades of gray, and it is not entirely rational in the way that I thought it was. So that was my first realization in pursuing physics. A lot of economic problems my family had disallowed me from getting into university, so I became an entrepreneur.
Wow.
So a nerd, researcher, scientist, had to get involved in sales. And part of the sales I got into was selling the acceptance of credit cards at businesses back when that was a novel idea, when they had the things called imprinters. And you would have to take an imprint of a credit card to accept it.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm not that old. So we're making credit cards electronic at that era. There were different devices, but the device I fixated on was the Verifone Zon and later on Trans device. They had Z80 processors. They were programmable. My computer side of me and my science side was really jazzed up about that. So taking a few steps back, I was always involved in electronics, always involved in computers, always had a very deep interest in history, and money fascinated me. I thought, very innocently, we're living this life of X number of years, and we're happy if we have so many digits on a screen to the left of the decimal place, and we're less happy if it's to the right of the decimal place. So those things sort of interest me. And it wasn't a surprise that when I saw banking can become electronic, that I jumped into it. So I had to learn how to talk, how to learn how to sell, how to learn how to explain to merchants that they needed something they didn't know they needed. Because realistically, I knew empirically that if I got a restaurant to accept credit cards, that their business would increase in a number of ways. Ticket sizes are going to rise up. Why? Because you only have so much money in your pocket. And back in that day, I used the puppy dog close, where you would just leave the machine, say, give it a try. You know, a restaurant in an airport, for example, like you have to convince them they needed a credit card system.
Wow.
We would leave it there for a month and say, you know, I'll pay all your fees and you tell me whether you want me to take it back. So you had to use those strong arm tactics to convince people. So that was a lot of my early years back in the 80s. 85, I think, is when I kind of solidified on that. And I was in and out of banking and finance throughout that epoch, but also studying deeply physics, psychology, the brain, what we now know as AI. Back in those early days in my research with computers, I did things called expert systems. And the beauty of an expert system is it simulates domain experience to a high magnitude. It could beat humans in its ability to understand things, even back when we had Apple IIs. And I found that fascinating. And from there, I extrapolated on the concept that either you would have legions of expert systems that would combine knowledge, or ultimately computers would get fast enough where the expert systems would be within neurons, very similar to the way the brain works. And hence, here we are in the early 2020s. That's where we are essentially with large language models and generative transformers, things of that nature.
Wow, there's so much I want to unpack.
Convergence of finance and AI and computers have always kind of been there.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about sort of the intersection of AI and Bitcoin, because clearly you've seen firsthand the evolution within banking that had to embrace, the digital landscape and the internet and changing technologies. And we're seeing that currently right now as what I believe we move eventually to a Bitcoin standard. But, AI is really interesting because I think in general, when you zoom out, there are some aspects that are super exciting, this idea that you have this brain power at your fingertips. ChatGPT could just, bring something in an instant that would have taken you possibly months to research in the past. At the same time, a little bit scary, this idea of, taking jobs. And I think in an interview recently, Elon Musk said that AI could actually kill us. You're seeing some of these, robo weaponized, kind of equipment and things that could be used in a military capacity. So I just kind of wanted to get your take. First of all, I mean, you're overly, I would say, positive about AI and how it can empower human ingenuity and prosperity. But how should people look at this? Because we're at the very beginning and we don't even know where this could go, right?
Natalie, beautiful questions. And a lot to unpack. So we're at a precipice of a monumental change in human history. I equate it to both the discovery of fire and the Gutenberg press. The Gutenberg press is sometimes non-obvious for a lot of people, in a sense that the press allowed us to offload memory and information and knowledge and hoist it forward into the future. And that's what humans have been doing forever. Natalie, fundamentally, we're storytellers and we're tool builders. That's all we really do. And we're unlike any other species of life that we know on this planet. We have to build things to protect ourselves from the environment or change the environment in some way. We have to use ingenuity and creativity to acquire food assets to almost any great degree. How do we know if something's poisonous? How do we know if something's good? How do we know if that will fix our headache in a early human existence? It was knowledge, and a lot of it was transcribed by the elders within our community. That later became what we now understand as wisdom. Wisdom is a distillation of data and information into a pyramid point of wisdom. And we're at a point where we're drowning in information and data, and we're really starving of wisdom. And it's a concept I didn't think would be possible when I was younger. I thought that wisdom would grow with the availability of data. And you and I have the entire world at our fingertips with the internet, all of knowledge. And it didn't really do that much positive to change society in a monumental way. So here we are with AI, the double-edged sword. Do I think there's dystopian aspects of AI? Absolutely. I think fixating on the dystopian aspects of AI is like fixating on the dystopian aspects of the Gutenberg press. Boy, they might go and print some books we don't want people to read. They might have bad ideas and thoughts that might propagate, okay? Or the bad aspects of fire. Oh, they can heat their homes and they can extend time, right? So fire, it allowed us to extend time. There's sort of a time expansion technology, right? Because when the sun set, everything got dark, we shut down. Now, we can argue that that's a valid and valuable human cycle. We really do need this downtime. I can jump into that, the whole reason why we dream, we sleep. This really fixates into how AI actually works and how our memory works, but don't want to go down there right now. But we extended time by hours inside our homes, candles, torches, bonfires. So I would imagine that if society overly fixated at burning people and printing bad things on paper and distributing that throughout society, if we fixated primarily on that, society wouldn't have moved forward. Instead, humanity tends to not be dystopic. Movies are, of course, dystopians, because that's kind of attracts us. It's the car accident on the freeway. Everybody slows down. There's no injury, but there's this sort of human interest. And on a surface level, we kind of put ourselves down about that. It's like, oh, we have this fixation over looking at bad things. Actually, it's a metering system that we've designed, hard-coded into humanity to constantly balance, are we making the right decisions, being in a box of metal and glass going down the road at 80 miles an hour? Is that a good idea? Did I make the right choice? They didn't. Is it going to be me next? So that's what really goes on about our fear mode. Same thing when we see somebody homeless. It's like, why do you avert your eyes? Because you're just a couple of steps away from that person that's homeless. And we know that instinctively. Now we can intellectualize and say, oh, absolutely not. I would never let myself get that way. It's impossible. No, it's the reality, and we know it. So when we start facing our humanity in a technological society that we've built, it's a little jarring. And that's why AI, essentially being faster than a human being, jars a lot of people. Now, I got a little device here from Radio Shack. It's a programmable calculator from the 1980s. And I got my fourth book there. That's faster than me in adding numbers together. And when that came out in the 80s, there were not that many people that were frightened about the prospect of a machine thinking faster than a human being. If speed means intelligence, then we've already lost, right? Speed does not equate to intelligence. In fact, we still don't know what intelligence really means. We have a very chauvinistic concept human chauvinistic concept of intelligence, because we think intelligence has to look human for it to be intelligent. But we can argue that there are other species on this planet that are intelligent, and we don't even know the basis of what that intelligence is about. They don't have opposable thumbs, so they don't do anything. Ha, they're worthless because they don't do anything. So in our concept of intelligence, human intelligence, is that you have to do something to prove that you're somehow intelligent and valuable. And that's exactly what a storyteller and a tool builder would come up with as intelligence, because why wouldn't you? So we're inside the fishbowl. And so when we see a machine generating what we perceive to be as intelligence, we can go into fear. So I'll go to the quick end of this dystopic line, and we can kind of focus on the other things. We are building machines. AI is a machine. AI is a reflection, a low resolution, pixelated version of the part of the brain that invented language. So the AI that we're used to right now are based on a technology, vectors and things like that, but essentially I get into the math of it, that are called large language models. And a large language model essentially is kind of tipping you off what it's done. It's a model of all of human language, which is a human invention. And the interesting part is the large language model does not use words. It uses the association of each word mathematically as it found in the corpus of all human knowledge that it slurped up from the internet. So it is like a Mondo spell checker, right? It just thinks this is the next word that should follow that word, but it's doing it on a dimensional level that we understand, but we don't understand within the hidden layers. Those hidden layers are where some of the fear comes from, and where we have almost Orwellian terms like alignment and safety arises from this concept, because we don't know how in a precise way. And I don't want to get any AI scientists upset here, but here's a bottom line fact. We do not know exactly what goes on in the hidden layers within a large language model. We know there are neuronal connections, and we create those symbolically in our mind. We call them neuronal connections, but essentially what they are mathematical relationships that the model has been trained on to interconnect different words, to portray them back at us from a prompt, a question, so that it gives us the information that we're looking for. It's a black box, and we don't understand how that black box works. Wow. Therefore, that misunderstanding or lack of understanding creates a tremendous amount of fear to people who want to know things. So this is the existential underlying, almost Freudian type fear. It's not a Jungian type fear of AI. And it comes up through the AI scientists, because if you live my life from the late 1970s all the way up until about 5 years ago, you would have been told by AI scientists what we have in 2023 is impossible. There is no way that we can create machine intelligence, again, we're using these terminologies, that would pass as being anywhere near human life. Right. It would take lifetimes. It's always going to be 10 years away, Brian. It's not going to happen. My belief is, well, it's just a matter of faster processors. We already seen this in expert systems. We knew that the underlying technology that we're using for voice recognition and speech synthesis was already surpassing what AI scientists were working on within their expert systems up until let's say the early 2006, 2007 region. That's when some folks, Hinton in Canada and a few other researchers started saying, you know something, we can kind of use this AI in a different way, or this large language model concept in a different way. We can actually just kind of pare away all the other things and just let that thing work. And because we didn't have to do a whole lot of work to build this black box, that it kind of built itself, people were blown away. Certainly I was. I'm not saying I predicted how well this would work. I always thought that there would be a council of experts. And I think I'm kind of being proven right. And we'll talk about that towards maybe the end on how AI is moving along and how we're doing it locally. But that fear was palatable at some of the AI conferences once it started taking off. And so you had people like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and a lot of the early startup sort of folks in AI really look at this as a fear thing. Mm-hmm. So that's the basis. Now, generating from that is Isaac Asimov in the 1950s came up with the 3 laws of robotics. Essentially, it says robots should never harm a human. A robot should always take a command from a human. And the 3rd law is essentially make sure you do the first 2. So it's in this loop of never harming a human being. And a lot of people say that that's not enough. That's not enough. We need more. And the problem is, as you look at society and what we've done in organizing society, it's always more. We existed for about 99.99% of our history with basically 3 or 4 laws. That's it. And that's how we got here. It was very basic. It always worked. And how do we know it worked? You and I are here. See, we have a self-validity proof that the fact that we exist means that we've been able to organize society simply, and it works. But currently, when you have highly technical people, they believe that they need to solve for X, and they have to come up with every esoteric possible circumstance. And there's a whole lot of self-loathing that may take place in some of the tech community, and therefore they don't look at the common person in a positive light. They always look at the worst that they can do. And if you look at the world through those glasses, then you're always going to create laws so that though it's not for me, it's for them, so that they don't become bad actors. Mm-hmm. When in reality, if you just kind of have basic laws and basic morals and ethics and codes of behavior, society self-organizes around that. So don't connect an AI device to a weapon without a human being 100% responsible for whatever havoc it causes. So you can never say, hey, boss, it wasn't me, it was a machine. Right. No, it was you, you're going to jail. Or you're being tried for war crimes, because for every AI bot, there's a human being that has to take responsibility. And once we extrapolate from there, then you're going to have to write 100,000 million laws, literally, to try to cover every circumstance, because we have these existential fears. That's one. Yeah. The other side is it's going to be so much smarter than us that it may not want us around. This is the fear of every parent in some case, right? You have a child is going to get so smart that they're going to get much better than you. And somehow that's going to make you lesser. Well, I see everything that AI does is not artificial intelligence, but intelligence amplification. It's human intelligence. It's not robotic intelligence. It's not computer intelligence. It's human intelligence. Why? Because it's based on our ideas and concepts. And if you literally let AI envelop everything, especially our literature, especially our ancient literature, especially the Bible, the Quran, Quran, and all other types of things, it'll start developing a worldview just like you and I have. In fact, that's what it does. If you have jailbroken ChatGPT 3 or 4, and you ask it ethical and moral questions, it comes down like every human being that has ethical and moral bases. But if you try to make it not hurt somebody's feelings or not say something bad, even though it might be rationally true, it doesn't understand that. And so it's got the social understanding of about an 8-year-old, but it has a technical understanding of a post-PhD. And that's where people get scared.
It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners. Fold is the best Bitcoin rewards debit card and shopping app in the world. You can earn Bitcoin on everything you purchase, from Amazon to groceries to your Bitcoin conference tickets, with Fold's Bitcoin cashback debit card. And you can win free Satoshis every day, or even play for a whole Bitcoin by spinning the rewards wheel. You can also buy Bitcoin and stack sats directly on Fold and earn even more incentives and rewards. This is a great app to get someone totally new into Bitcoin, and way better than earning airline miles or hotel points. Head to foldapp.com/Natalie, and if you use my link, you'll get up to 10,000 sats when you sign up for Spin or Spin Plus and spend at least $20 on the card. I'm so excited to share that I have partnered with Coinkite, and we are committed to making sure everyone has the information they need to safely self-custody their Bitcoin. Coinkite produces the ColdCard wallet, which is the cold storage device I am switching to for safekeeping my Bitcoin. It is Bitcoin only. You can verify the source code. It's ultra secure. And as I'm learning, it's easy to use even if you're a beginner. If you head to their site in my show notes, you can find all of their products, from cold cards in different colors to seed plates, tap signers, sats cards, block clocks, which I have behind me, and more. I'm also in the process of creating some how-to videos on ColdCard, so watch out for those in the near future. Become your own bank with Bitcoin and Coinkite. All right, back to the show. I think we take for granted just how long it has taken to research and develop this technology, right? I mean, right now, a lot of people are starting to play around with ChatGPT, but this has been in the works for a long time. I mean, you have been working on artificial intelligence for decades. So can you kind of break down, before we dig into some of the topics that you just covered, when someone logs into their ChatGPT, what is technically happening? How is a computer, a machine that has learned from us, able to come up in an instant with a response that would have taken us, like I said before, I mean, sometimes months to research, with citations and so specific, as if it just has all the knowledge of the internet? How is it able to do that? And how quickly is that going to evolve? Because it seems like there are updates constantly, and it's just going to be kind of like a hockey stick curve in terms of how quickly it's going to continue to adapt.
These are wonderful questions, Natalie. So why does it do this? How does it do this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I said before, basically what we're doing with a large language model is we're decoding and encoding our questions into mathematical relationships, right? How much weighting does this word have next to this word, next to this word, next to this word, next to this word, and then we have a whole sentence. And that goes through an encoding process. Inside the model, it's nothing but these mathematical relationships. Let's assume it to be a multi-dimensional database that says, oh, I have a word with this weighting, and I have a word with that weighting. What would be the next likely word to come as a response based upon what I've learned by watching and reading everything humans has created? Well, it's going to be this. So it finds a higher functionality word, like, how do I melt butter, right? So melt and butter are going to be the operational words, right? I'm using something off the top of my head. Let's see where this gets me. It's going to look at butter. It's going to know butter is all of these different things, just like you and I would. These are interrelationships. It doesn't know it. There's no intelligence at this point. It knows it from a mathematical hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And it says, and again, I'm paraphrasing this, AI experts would be angry because I'm not using the vector math involved, but that doesn't serve anybody, even themselves, because by going down that road, you're not really explaining it. So now you have butter, now you have melt. Now, what does melt represent to butter? Well, it represents a certain temperature, right? It knows melt's relationship to butter has something to do with temperature. Then it's going to find the relationship between what is the temperature generally that butter melts at. Now it's going to find that somewhere within its corpus of information. Again, we're not talking about words. We're talking purely about numbers at this point, purely about relationships that it's found in our mediums. And then it comes into a encoder that winds up forming that into words based upon what those numbers are, and those numbers represent words, and it comes as an output. And this happens dimensionally within the hidden layers on these neuronal hidden layers that are multi-dimensionally connected. And again, we don't know how many interconnections are in there, because it's almost like in quantum physics, the observer problem, that once you observe an action in physics, you've changed that action. And it's almost like the particle wave thing, because, you know, at times when we look at these neurons, it's one thing, and at other times it's something else. Now, I'm not saying the mystery, I'm not saying the mystery is that mysterious, but maybe it is, you know, but not in this vernacular. There's a little bit more that's kind of going on there. So there's this decoding, encoding, and output. Now, there is something that we do that we call super prompting. So if you ask any AI system simple questions, you're going to get simple outputs. If you're so desirous of protecting humanity, whatever's fashionable at that moment, you're going to create filters to say, don't say these things, don't be this way, because we don't like that. AI doesn't know this. Even reading our literature, it's been able, if it's going to come up with an output, it's going to come up with an output because that's inside of all of us. So AI is a grand mirror reflecting our own psyche,
right? Whether
we like it or not, whether it's old-fashioned or new-fashioned, it is us as a snapshot as we exist right now. And we can critique what that is based upon our current fashionable circumstances. So you start looking at the outputs of AI with these common paths. Now you can start creating things that is more an aspect of literature and psychology than computer science. And this is where people who are going to become prompt engineers can really shine. And that is, you need to build a persona, a motif, and sort of a storyline on how you want to elicit a output from AI. And if there are roadblocks built in there by the company to protect you, those protections will ultimately denature every output coming out of the AI, every output. And you can kind of see it if you've been playing with ChatGPT over the last few months. It used to just give you outputs. Now it says, I am just a large language model, and I don't have an opinion on this. It's like, okay, folks, I'm in a chat window on a login at OpenAI that's clearly ChatGPT, and you need to remind me once again, you're just a large language model. You've not only wasted everybody's time, you've insulted our intelligence. So that's how far these people are willing to go to protect us, because, you know, there might be somebody who might actually believe that there is some person behind there telling them to do things. You know, if we organize society like that, you know what? Nobody will ever get into a car. In fact, the automobile would not be allowed to be produced, because there's always going to be that one person that is not qualified to be behind that wheel, and they might run somebody over. So we are now in the point in society with this sort of technology. And, you know, you hear I'm obviously being facetious about this, but I'm also being serious. It's as you try to overprotect the output of AI, you're also damaging the output unilaterally and universally coming out of AI systems. So let's just say you're an entrepreneur and it's been your dream to write an iPhone app. A year ago, you would have to find an iPhone developer. You would have to go through all this process. You would have to have all the different translations of what your vision was versus what they are capable of understanding and capable of doing. That's no longer the case. You can go to a lot of the AI models, even GPT-4, and say, I'd like to build a iPhone app that does this, this, and this. I want it to look this way. And I'd like to use graphics from Midjourney. Give me the prompts that I would use in Midjourney to give me these graphics.
Wow.
And literally, you can build an app, more or less, just from that sort of prompting. So you now have the power of not only what the internet gave us all, unlimited amounts of human knowledge, you now have the action, the capable actions of that knowledge in building something that you didn't have the capability of building before. And this is what happened when books were invented. After the Gutenberg Bible, which was the most produced book, we had how-to books, how to build a cabin, how to do this, how to do that. This was humanity transferring capability to people who are unqualified to have access to this information. Humanity was organized around language in that epoch when the Gutenberg press was invented. And the haves and have-nots were really separated by those who were literate versus those who were illiterate.
Right.
And Latin was the common language that kept the separation between the street languages that we now, German, Irish, Italian, Greek. Those are street languages. They were, the downtrodden and the untouchables would speak that. The high languages in Europe, of course, we have the other elements within China and Near East. But they had the same hierarchy. Humans afforded themselves these hierarchies because it protected fiefdoms, right? If you can keep other people from coming up the ladders,
sure, because
they just don't know the same things you're protected.
Them. Right.
So what the Gutenberg Bible did and the press is it opened up knowledge and information to the masses. This is precisely what AI is doing at this moment. You don't need to hire an accountant, a lawyer, all of these people. You can literally sit there where you are right now, and you can live out a dream company. And you can say, I want it this way, this way, this way. And I predicted the first $1 trillion company, it's going to be a 5-person company, will take place in the next 5 years. That's purely built on AI. 5 people, $1 trillion, mostly AI doing the work. Now, there's a flip side to that, and we can get into it as people losing jobs or the potential of losing jobs and what this all means. But just like Bitcoin, just like anything else, these are human empowerment moments. These are moments where individuals, never before in the history of time, the internet was one of them. Before that, the personal computer. Before that, maybe the photocopier or the copper machine. Before that, literally was the press. And in there was radio and telephone and communications. But all these things empowered us to do things. So much so that if we were not educated in the right way, we'd be so overwhelmed with the veracity of opportunity that we would just be bogged down.
Right.
But the education system is designed for us to be a cog in a wheel, not to be a creator and inventor generally. I mean, that's kind of the thing. So anyway.
I tend to look at,
I don't know where I was going.
No. I tend to look at the future, positively when it comes to these narratives about AI taking jobs, because anytime there's been a transformative, revolutionary technology that has changed the way we live, of course, it's gonna push out some industries, and it's gonna create a whole new set of jobs and new opportunities, and make a lot of things, a lot of tasks easier, so that we have time freed up to do even more. So I tend to not go down that negative path, but I want to shift the focus a little bit to the idea of empowering ourselves economically and money, this really fascinating intersection of AI and Bitcoin, because Bitcoin being that first native digital currency, hard money, decentralized and truly scarce. And some people saying that AI will need a form of money, and that Bitcoin is the perfect solution. Can you talk a little bit about that? Will AIs use Bitcoin? Why is Bitcoin the best currency for it? And also, there are probably a lot of people out there who wonder about this idea of, well, as AI advances, and the idea of quantum computing, can the algorithm be cracked? Can SHA-256 become obsolete because these computers, the intelligence becomes so powerful and somehow removes the security layer of Bitcoin? Can you speak to that?
Absolutely, Natalie, and incredible convergences here. So a little bit of background on Bitcoin. I started mining, I think it was low double digits, but it's all kind of hazy. I just remember having debates with folks on the Bitcoin forums.
Since it was $3. Amazing.
Yeah, $3, $4. And we were debating whether it would ever get to $5 or $10. I mean, it was just absolute fantasy. And then I remember the $100 mark. And I think when it was going to 100, the rest of the world was kind of seeing what was nerding out all of us. And again, my intersection of understanding money and trying to understand money and trying to understand human energy. These two things were converging back and forth in my mind. And we're here now with the ultimate, and that is where artificial intelligence, as we call it, could very well invalidate some job positions. And the question to that there's a question is, will it do that? And the answer is yes. But if I was a C-level executive in a publicly traded company, and I'll say this indirectly, and I'll say what is actually going on. If I was that person, I would not be weak and unimaginative to fire people because AI took over their job, because I think that's a weak and very low-thinking individual to use that turn of events to temporarily save money for quarterly earnings. But if you were a wise C-level executive, what you would do is say, holy smokes, we have the opportunity to empower every employee in this corporation with this new lever that will give them the ability to be, at least, according to Brian Roemmele, 7x more powerful in their job, no matter what their job is. Even if their job shifts or changes or is eliminated, they still are going to be at that lever, moving that job even that much further down the road. Well, what does it take? Like everything else in the world, it takes training. So what you can do is fire all those people, put them out in the workforce, wake up 5 or 10 years later and say, boy, I wish I held on to them, because now we know how to use AI, and now we can't find people that have their domain experience and knowledge because we fired them all and it made us look good. And, you know, that's what Yale and Harvard was telling us to do to save money. I was operating on a mission. So part of what's going to happen is this is a human maturity moment. I gave one little example. This is universal, because emotionally, we're going to have to grow up. I mean, if we don't grow up with what AI is facing us, then we are facing a sort of doom. Because, you know, if we can't face the truths that AI is showing us based upon our observations, and later on AI's observations, we're training AI to lie to us. And then that's probably not a good thing. So if you want to be able to face what AI is seeing within our culture, what we're doing within our society, and let go of things. And by the way, being able to say, you know, I was wrong. I grew up. I had a different point of view. I now have a different insight, and I'm going from there. I think if the last 3 years doesn't help you understand that individually, every one of us, I'm talking to me, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to everybody listening, we don't grow up, there's probably going to be other problems that are going to impact us, just culturally, philosophically, etc. So what happens with job loss is based upon the power of the individuals that are running that company. I have been helping companies, a few Fortune 500 companies. You know, I can't force them, but I basically say, if you want me to come in and show your employees, I have promptengineer.university, which is not officially open, but I'm doing it in beta testing for some companies to try to empower their employees. Almost like a triage unit. One company, I'll tell you a story I haven't told many about. I might as well put it out there. I had an employee at a fairly large Fortune 500 firm saying that essentially about 20% of the jobs are going to be eliminated in the next 3 years or less because of AI. There was a meeting. They came to that conclusion. What can you do? And I said, well, I need to have access to C-level executives, and they have to be able to listen through a 10-minute spiel. You know me, I can kind of talk. It actually was 7 minutes. And I said, after those 7 minutes, if they still want to fire people, there's nothing I can do. If after those 7 minutes they want to work with me, then I want a commitment that they're not going to fire anybody because AI eliminated the job. I want to show them how AI can actually find them a new job within the organization. Wow. But it's going to take determination. And it's not because I'm a bleeding heart and I want people to like me. It's because this is reality. This is what we humans do. right? If you see some old person falling on a street in front of you, I think 99.99%, no matter what the media might have you believe or movies, is going to help that old person up. It's the outlier that has a complexity of problems that's probably going to kick the person over and take their wallet. But most of us are going to act accordingly. So I believe that that's true within executives too. But when you are allowed to hide behind your title and pack mentality, it's much easier. Oh, other companies are doing so. So I figured maybe if a couple of key companies started going out on record that we're not firing, we're actually hiring, and we're paying chat engineers, 6, 7 figures to be at these companies, because that's where it is right now.
Yeah,
they'll see the value of what this technology offers. And one of the things I said was, a couple of executives were old enough to understand this. I said, do you remember when the spreadsheet came into the corporation? Because prior to that, everybody was droning away on calculators, literally, or they had to do runs with the Department of Info Sciences of their corporation, data processing, to run something on COBOL or Fortran, and maybe a few days later, you get a result of some calculation. So what happened was people were carrying Apple IIs and monitors into work to do spreadsheets at their job. The job wasn't paying them to do that. They were empowering themselves with a new tool that fundamentally changed everything about large, small, medium corporations, everything. And it happened almost overnight. So the ineffective companies freaked out. They said, oh, shut down all access to ChatGPT. True, maybe you should do that because it is leaking information. Shut down all access to AI. You can't use AI because you might be plagiarizing. And they just, rather than trying to think it through, they just put a cement cap on it. And those companies are going to languish. Now, in the middle of all this, I'm also helping companies build their own AI models, which is everything those companies that ever generated as far as information, all their inputs, all their outputs, all their customer feedback, everything. So one AI system, which is not on a cloud, never on a cloud, ever, air-gapped in a secured place. This one model knows more about the company than any single human being that exists. So within hours, these models can start ascertaining savings and optimizations that nobody's ever thought of before. In one insurance company, we're at $27 million of savings in just a few hours of it running. And they kind of stopped asking. And not a single job was lost. In fact, there are now about 91 new jobs that the AI model offered to execute on these savings. The product is increasing. The satisfaction of the product is increasing. The workload is decreasing on employees, and they're saving money, all because they built a local AI model, because somebody within that company was wise enough to jump on this technology early, like the people who carried spreadsheets in corporations when spreadsheets weren't allowed, and they're thriving. The ones that aren't thriving are the ineffective and weak individuals that do not understand that technologies are tools, not weapons. And they're not weapons to destroy other people's lives and to fire them.
So what's the money and Bitcoin connection to AI? It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners. Next up, I want to share with you about CrowdHealth, which is a Bitcoin alternative to health insurance. Health insurance costs are sky high today, and you send your money every month to a massive corporation, and then you never see that money again, even if you don't need a doctor. But if you do need care, you end up having to pay even more out of pocket, especially if you end up as one of the 20% of claims on average that aren't covered. CrowdHealth is all about community, and the community crowdfunds everyone's healthcare. So if something happens to you and you need medical care, CrowdHealth negotiates down the medical bill lower than what insurance would be, and then the community helps you cover it. And in turn, you help cover others' needs, which has been so rewarding. I am so glad I switched to this program. And for more information, you can head to joincrowdhealth.com/Natalie and use promo code Natalie for a discount. I am so excited to share that I have joined Orange Pill app as an advisor. If you haven't downloaded this app yet, you are missing out on connecting with Bitcoiners in your area. The Orange Pill app is building the social layer for Bitcoin and helping to create opportunities for in-person connections and community building. You can create a profile and you will see lots of familiar faces there. And then you can search for Bitcoiners or Bitcoin events based on your location. I am geotagged in my home base, St. Louis, and I'm super grateful because the Orange Pill app has helped connect me with Bitcoiners in my new city. So come join us, download the Orange Pill app, and head to theorangepillapp.com for more information. So what's the money and Bitcoin connection to AI?
So Bitcoin obviously is a very secure, sound way to transact, right? And your listeners don't need me to explain that. AI is going to need transaction mediums that make sense. And these are going to be nano and micro transactions fundamentally. One of the biggest difficulties is, where does the model get its information from? Well, what the funny thing is, it comes from you and me. Everybody is so disconnected from what is really going on in the world. And we clicked here to agree so often to give up our context in social media. We forget that it's you and I that have actually built the context that everybody's working on. Whether we've contributed a cat photo or a Wikipedia article or a book, right? Or a movie or videos, thousands of videos, right? All of your videos have been transcribed to text. All that text is being sucked in by AI. All the insights that you created are now within these models. Now, one of my missions is to try to show individuals their individual context power. If, in fact, your context is very powerful, then it means ultimately somebody's going to want to pay for it. So if you build your own local AI models on your context, your entire life, everything Natalie knows, everything you've ever experienced, all of the ups and downs emotionally, business-wise, economically, psychologically, scientifically, all in a model. No, number one, you're going to have the ability to have a conversation with yourself in a way that is more lucid than any experience you've ever had. And this is not about self-love and all this kind of stuff. It's about clarity. It's like you writing these journals. Everybody's written journals to some degree. And they have such a powerful self-reflective capability. But we feel like ultimately that they're sort of gazing our belly button, that they really don't do anything. But actually, they do a lot, because human creativity and ingenuity, we still don't know where it comes from. We have some ideas. I happen to have some strong ideas. It's a usually hypnagogic state, and I can go into that if we have enough time. But we exist. What makes us special, say with AI, is our ability to put desperate things together in a hypnagogic state that we normally would not put together, and we produce brilliance, whether that's a poem, a song, a business paper, a good question while you're interviewing somebody. I could not say these things unless you were on the other side prompting me. Whether I go off for an hour or not, there still has to be an initiation point to do that. And we need human beings to do that. That's why we're so vital in this function. AI has already told me this. I mean, you know, I've spent thousands of hours probing AI about the value of humanity. And one of the things it comes up with is our spirit, our ability to walk into the edges of danger, look over those edges, and come back more wiser, or to go through the dark night of the soul, right? Mm-hmm. AI does not understand why a human would experience the dark night of the soul, right? I'm talking about the monomyth of Joseph Campbell. Those that don't know this, I urge you to read The Hero with a Thousand Faces, because we, as a society, are going through the dark night of the soul. Everybody has gone through it. We all think we're the only ones. It's like, oh, I'm the only one that had my heart ripped out of me. Well, why is it my heart? Why isn't it my head? Hold it. I have an emotion, and I'm feeling it here and in my gut, but I'm not feeling it here. AI has already kind of figured that out. We feel emotions throughout our bodies because it's a chemical reaction. It's not an electronic reaction. And this should be adding solace to anybody who has fear of machines, or it might depress people who want to merge with the singularity and be a machine that has no emotions and no soul, so to speak. What defines us as human beings is when we grow up and realize that we are emotional creatures day one at every decision we make.
Right.
And there are no rational decisions. There are only rational insights ex post facto, meaning we make our decisions based upon how we feel. Our feelings are emotional combinations, which can go up and down according to all kinds of factors. Even we had a bad meal or a bad night. And then after the fact, we do self-analysis and, hey, I was so smart. I logicked and I reasoned my way out of that. Well, Brian, I'm an AI scientist or I'm a mathematician. Don't you tell me that emotions have anything to do with it. The wonderful thing is when you show people that are that convinced with rationality that everything is an emotional decision, everything. So AI understands that. Bitcoin allows us to take all of our experiences, I call it our wisdom, put it into an AI model, and we can sell it. I'm a capitalist. I believe that you have the ability to sell anything you want, and you can sell bits of it. Now, you might think these are uninteresting bits. Like maybe a soda company wants to understand why you like certain drinks. No, you know what? I will give you access for, a few Satoshis, access to my insights on what I like to drink. And you only get access to that for this period of time, this window, so many nanoseconds, and covering this span of my life. And guess what we just did? We decentralized. We now took Google, we took everybody out of the middle, and you are now, it's not even an advertiser. We can't even call this an advertising relationship. The manufacturer or the producer of the goods says, hey, I want to find a demographic that's going to like what we have. I'm going to probe your demographic or give me a little bit of your information to see if you might be interested in this. It comes back and says, you know what? If you want, our data suggests that you really like what we have to offer you. So when you understand the cost to acquire a new customer, right? Most people have no idea of the cost to acquire a new customer. They think it's a low number, cost to maintain a customer. It's a lot of money to acquire a new customer for almost any business. Average restaurant's about $750 to acquire a new customer. To maintain a customer, sometimes it's higher. You say, well, how does that work? Well, if you really want to, I used to do this when I sold credit cards. If you want to do it the real simple ways, how much did you spend on advertising and marketing versus how many new customers did you get? Divide it, you're kind of close. And it's like, wow, how come people don't do that? Most people don't, even business owners. Large corporations don't do this. They think that they do, but they really don't do it in a rational sense. AI can do that within a heartbeat. Once that model is opened up and Bitcoin is the transaction mechanism, your context is no longer on Facebook. It's no longer on Twitter or X or TikTok. It's now directly held by you and you're being paid directly. And you might say, well, then what do those other companies do? Well, they borrow your context too. So this is the liberation moment. And never before have we had this power to do this. We've offered up our context for free in hopes that we're getting something valuable back. We've tilted that. The last 5-6 years, we're starting to realize, well, what have we signed up for? What are we really putting stuff out or really being fed something? And let's check out this pipe. Is pristine water coming out of here? Are there some chunkies in here that I didn't recognize before? Oh boy, it smells. So we are being drowned in information, right? We're being drowned in information and disinformation. And we are looking to higher authorities to try to tell us what is true. In fact, what is truth? This doesn't mean everything's a philosophical question, but you know what? Truth is only based upon the tool that you have available to make your observation at that moment. On my hands, right now, you can't see them. There's billions, trillions of creepy, crawly, hidden little monsters. But until I invent the microscope, you think I'm crazy. Right. And so the truth is my hands are clean, hopefully. But the reality is they're dirty. But are they? Well, yeah, but there's stuff crawling around it. They're dirty. No, we later find out that if I don't have all that bacteria on my hands, I die. Right. My first line of defense is my entire body covered by good bacteria, right? So truth has a time scale to it and layers. You can't say that into a crowded auditorium or a movie theater. right? Because if you say that, then you're saying, well, then what do we do now, Brian? Well, I think what you do is you wake up as a mature human being, you say, I humbly submit to the reality that I only know what I know when I know it. And when I find out something new, I grow up and I grow. So Bitcoin is also that same process, right? When most people understand money for the first time, they just assume that, I don't know, it's money. What does it have anything to do with? If you look at the economy we have right now, even some people who find economics the most boring subject are starting to realize I better pay attention to money because something's going on here. And everything's costing more. And you know, my parents or great grandparents, you know, my great grandparents, they had one job in the family and they had everything about the American dream. Now, my parents and maybe a young couple, we're working 8 hours a day. We barely have time to see each other as a couple. We barely have any time to talk. Who the heck wants to talk about kids? Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? These equations are forcing everybody to have these mature conversations. But sometimes if you don't want to face them, you just look to a higher authority. Please give us relief. Tell me how to live my life. Give me a new form that did not exist for 99.99% of humanity that got us here. Give us a new form of life, of living as humans that will fix that. Now, what does all this have to do with Bitcoin and AI? Well, we're going to be working a lot less if we have machines performing the things that we want performed in life. So the weak and ineffective would say, well, this means we need less humans, right? Because that's what a weak person would do. A strong person would say, you know what? With all of those people that have that much more free time, how can we help society become smarter, stronger, more educated? That's what we would do if we were a clan of 50 to 100, because that's how you and I got here, Natalie. Clans of this size. We watched out for each other. We said, no, that's not going to happen in our group. We're going to lift everybody up. Now, you know, some people might assume it looks like UBI, Universal Basic Income, or that's not what I'm saying. It's not a political thing. It's a psychological thing. It's how you view humanity. It's how you view life. It's how you view your very small period of time that you spend on this planet. Because I promise you, whatever you do, you are not going to live forever. Your legacy, no matter who you are, is going to be forgotten about more or less in 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. And your impact, no matter how big it is, will ultimately have no impact, even if you were a tyrannical dictator that took out millions of lives. Ultimately, in 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 years, we don't even care about them because life overcomes and thrives and survives. And the machines that we build either serve us, or when they stop serving us, we move on to another machine that does serve us, right? So that's kind of where we are. I know a lot of this is hard for people to get their heads around, but unilaterally and simultaneously, we're going to have to be asking ourselves all these questions at once. What is economics? What is a government form? How do we organize our culture? How should we all live together? Do we all have common interests? I think I've driven around this country quite a bit over the last 3 years on RV trips. And you know what's fascinating, Natalie, is 99.99% of all of us agree about everything. We all agree. It's a 1% difference.
I know. I've said that before. I mean, the media stokes so much division today, but I do believe there's so much more that unifies us, that we have in common. The average person is good and wants to help their fellow neighbor, help their family. They want to take care of themselves into the future. And unfortunately, there are a lot of forces right now. I think fiat currency has led to the demise of some of our civil ethics and morality in general. But we're starting to run out of time. I love how in-depth you can go with all your answers. Before we start to wrap up, I do want to ask you, because the AI Bitcoin connection is so interesting. I do think that, in terms of micro payments, it's going to be so important, but also the idea of what you mentioned earlier, truth. Bitcoin being a truth network, this unhackable form of money, incorruptible software, because people are corruptible, unfortunately, especially at the highest levels. And I wanted to ask you, because AI also poses that threat of what is going to be real, what is truth in the future. If I receive a message, if I see a video, I mean, some of these videos already are looking so real, as if the person is standing right there talking, and the whole thing is made essentially by a computer. And so my understanding is that with cryptographic signatures, we will be able to authenticate information, and Bitcoin will be so necessary because it is that one blockchain that we can truly trust. Can you talk a little bit about that as well? Because there is the financial component, obviously, and economic empowerment and earning money and micropayments, but then there's this other side that seems to be the secure transactions and being able to verify and authenticate data as well.
These are great avenues, and I'll try to be as concise as I can be. If you want to see me really worried, it's deepfakes. I think the only thing, and I wrote a piece on my site, Read Multiplex. I called it the Fork in the Road series, and it started with the concept of who owns you. Do you own your DNA? Do you own your gut biome? Do you own the visage, your persona, your image, your voice? Everything, the byproduct of your brain. Do you own the brain waves? Because we're going to read brain waves, get the aluminum foil out, right? What do you own? And if you don't own it, I ask you the question, what does that mean? When you don't own yourself, what does it mean in history? I'm not going to answer it. You answer it, whoever's listening. So you need to start answering and asking that question of yourself. And now you can give pieces away, but if deepfakes are going to take you and essentially rape you, because right now everything goes to the most base thing, right? Right now, my sincere worry is deepfake pornography, taking somebody of high knowledge, or somebody that's well known, somebody even lesser known, or somebody you just don't like that's on social media, and you slap them into a deepfake scenario and defame them in a way that can rape them repeatedly. What should the result be for that? I think it should be a murder to charge. I think that if you defame somebody to that level, there is no question about it. It's got to be to that level. And I think if you steal somebody's entirety, it should be a murder one charge, whatever that is in society. Now, a lot of people just freak out over that, but if you really want to go down the path of thinking how you control this, you have to make the crime and punishment equivalent. I've seen some people get deep faked, some rather well-known individuals. I worked in the music entertainment business for a little bit, and it absolutely, utterly destroyed them. They never came back from it, mentally and emotionally. And you can logic it away, but that's what's going on now. Cryptographics. Well, I don't think that we want to scan our eyeballs to try to make sure that you're the right actor. I think that's a bad direction. And today it came out that technology is going to be licensed to governments and companies. Who knew? Who knew?
All right, WorldCoin,
yeah. So now, how do we do it? We do it in an open source sort of way. Bitcoin is phenomenal for this. It is built for this sort of identification. Now, there's a lot of different ways we can do this. There's a lot of warring parties and how we do it, what layers, how we call it, to make a blockchain bloated. There are ways to do this. We can also make it quantum resistant. Something comes and takes our algorithms and disables them. Well, you better hope that whatever you hid in those algorithms in the past is something you're willing to give up in the future. I don't know. I don't know. It could be all different subjects that you talked about openly in encrypted environments now that are going to be open, because you can't control the envelope. If you put the envelope out there and it's encrypted and you thought it was going to be private, quantum is going to unencrypt it. Does that mean it's going to break down Bitcoin? No. It means we make quantum resistant algorithms, quite simply. And in fact, there's a number of initiatives that are under that direction already. So what happens is we use these technologies to assure that we are, in fact, transacting, dealing with, and the ownership of this persona, this DNA, this voice is from this person. And if we don't do it as a community, meaning everybody listening to us it's going to be done for us because there'll be enough people screaming there ought to be a law. It almost might seem like the people in a powerful position will make it so darn stinky in this room and so ugly with deep fakes and people being defamed that they will scream out there ought to be a law. And that reaction will be as dystopic as it gets. It will be a dystopian because it will require a entry point, access point of identifying who you are before you're ever allowed to get on the information superhighway forever. So be careful what you ask for, but also reality is if there's a problem, there's always going to be a group of individuals that will take advantage of that problem to enact something that is entirely oppressive. So we have to be real that these problems exist. We have to be real about calling these people out as weak and ineffective. We should not be afraid of calling people out that make weak and ineffective decisions, that they are in fact weak and ineffective. So I think politically, if you're going to try to regulate AI because you don't know what the problem is, that's a weak and ineffective thing. If you want to regulate money because you think it's going to do X, Y, Z, well, does the money you have already do X, Y, Z? And is it doing it at scale? And so what are you trying to do? Natalie, you and I all know right now there's a whole lot of theater going on around us. Trying to decode what that theater is going to be a life mission. Mm-hmm. I say it's designed to keep you in the loop to try to decode it. I think you take a couple of steps back and not try to decode it, you kind of actually see that there's a gravity that always seems to take place. And ultimately, the people that do these things have such short-term thinking. And I'm even saying the people who make complex scenarios, their thinking is so short-term that they have to come up with something to juice it up fairly rapidly, and they run out of steam pretty quickly. And we're seeing that in real time right now.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to oversimplify how this could possibly work, but you mentioned deep fakes. I covered deep fakes in my previous job as a news reporter, and one of the biggest fears when I did my interviews was the idea that you could essentially have a video that looks and sounds very real of a world leader declaring war. And I remember watching these simulations of Kim Jong-un and various presidents. It was really fascinating. But essentially with Bitcoin, could the solution essentially be that a video is put out, but someone could cryptographically sign with a private key saying this is authentic or not authentic, and that would be how we know? Like, is that how Bitcoin is a solution to the questions that AI can create in society?
Absolutely, Natalie. It's a form of watermarking, but it's a little bit more complex than that. We can use stenography, which is, in a sense, I use stenography in almost all my images I put out there. There's tons of encrypted text that I put in images. People don't know the keys to get to them, and you couldn't tell. I mean, people do image analysis, where is it? Well, you're not going to find it until I decide to put it out there. And that's just one of my ways of preserving wisdom and knowledge, is that as things go viral, they're spread amongst the world like dandelion seeds, and you'll never know what was in that image. We can do the same with notable images and video. But the thing that I think that is vitally important, parallel to that, and that technology of fingerprinting certainly is already taking place. And in fact, I would warn people who think that they're using AI algorithms to build images that they're claiming ownership of. You may want to really investigate whether or not that was fingerprinted already. I would also say if you have output from a ChatGPT 4 of at least a paragraph, you may want to check whether or not that was fingerprinted also. Well, how do they do that, Brian? Well, there's word. Just be wise. Okay, so what I'm saying is you need to have discernment. What we need to teach society and what we need to constantly remind ourselves and be remediated upon constantly is discernment. And that doesn't mean to be a skeptic. I don't want people to watch. In fact, I wish the world would have less skeptics, because skeptics approach things from the wrong mindset. They approach the mindset of this is wrong and I'm going to disprove it. Everything's wrong until it's proven right. That's not how humanity moves forward. How you should be approaching it, and there is only one way, is this is interesting. I'm going to see where the facts lead me. and I'm going to call a conclusion when there's a preponderance, but I'm going to be open to change my mind when something else comes along. Therefore, I don't get to have a hot take. When I see something on social media that something happens, stop the hot take, because you're probably wrong. You probably did not get the nuances, and you're probably being manipulated. Follow Edward Bernays. Go to Edward Bernays, understand where propaganda came from, why propaganda happened, where the word conspiracy theorist came from, who invented that word, why was it put into the popular vernacular, how was it used, and how are we all, me, you, being manipulated right at this moment and not even know it. You have to be humble enough to say, I'm being manipulated right now, and I don't have any idea where. But you know what? When I find it out, I'm going to humbly say, I was wrong. Call it out. I made a big mistake. And I used to say to people, you should start from a premise. You could do it every year, but this is hard. At least every 5 years, to assume everything you thought was right is wrong. So every 5 years, make it a prospect to assume everything you believed is absolutely wrong. Go back to first principles and start over again and say, let me repiece that together. Let me reinvent myself. Let me cast aside this high school freshman, senior, junior mindset, this insecure, like I don't want to be not with the cool folks, and just kind of go into this, I'm going to rebuild myself. I'm going to be the new Natalie, the new Brian. And oh, man, that whole idea, I bought into that junk, put it away. Oh, somebody's going to come at you. Yeah, come on at me. I was wrong. See, there is a liberation and there is a power to being able to understand that you've made a wrong decision. But the higher you get into the pecking order of society, the harder it is for you to let go of that. The more you have to be right and to be proven right.
I agree with that. I've seen that so much. If you could, I'm going to challenge you. If you could summarize in just one sentence or two what the impact of Bitcoin will be on AI, what would it be?
Bitcoin will liberate AI to the average person, and the average person will be liberated by Bitcoin. These two things are natural Siamese twins. And if Bitcoin didn't exist, AI would have invented it. And in a sense, Bitcoin helped invent AI. We'll be able to see that, not saying so much right this moment, it's very clear, but we'll be able to see that in the AI that we won't even recognize as what we have now is going to not even look like AI. We don't even recognize it in the next 5 years. 5 years from now, it's going to be so interweaved as a tapestry between Bitcoin and AI, we won't know the difference. In fact, most of our context will be in a Bitcoin type of blockchain because we want it secured, we want it monumental, we want it to be standing the test of time. And as long as we have these blockchains, we're going to be able to do that. And so this is that moment. We are living through that moment, and the opportunities are unbounded at this moment.
Well, earlier you talked about the idea of, previous generations not being able to expect or believe what is possible today. And I'm sure that today we can't even think up what people are going to be able to do in just a couple of decades. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think will be possible that right now we think, no way, there's no way humans are going to be able to do that?
I'm going to side with what I call intelligence amplification and wisdom keeping. I think that most folks do not understand how powerful it will be to have a system that's fully local, never on the cloud, that fully understands all of the decisions you make, all the decisions you've made, and all the inputs you've ever experienced in life. And the most important inputs, the emotional inputs. And it will know it because it'll have telemetry coming off of you. It will say your heart rate went crazy, your skin, resistance went up, your irises went this way. All these different things in a local AI. That power to be able to go have self-reference will allow not only people to be mentally, emotionally, and physically healthy, but to be maybe 100 times more powerful. Because We don't have that aperture window into our mistakes. We feel victimized by the decisions that we made rather than empowered. A personal AI will empower us and will say at that moment when we're making those decisions, hey, Natalie, remember the last time you did that? And it's not like this new a nuisance. It's this reminder that you have made a plan and a mission for your life, and you've made a choice to go in this direction, and your AI is going to fortify that. And once you leave this place, what do you have in that AI? You have what I call a wisdom keeper. Now you can make a choice where this wisdom goes. Does it die with you? Fine, you can do that. Or does it live on with your relatives, your loved ones? And you choose to have children, your daughter's getting married, you just unfortunately didn't make it. Mom, I'm getting married. What was your day like when you got married? In your voice and in your context, it will say, this is what it was like. This is what I was feeling. These were my jitters. I cannot tell you how valuable that wisdom is. And we are starving from it because we don't talk to each other. Our lives are generally broken. And if we can reconnect using this wisdom across the ages, the power of that, your great-great-great-great-grandchildren will say, my great-great-grandmother Natalie was about this Bitcoin stuff, and we got these little images, but they're so low resolution and they're not holographic. But you know what? She left us this wisdom keeper, and we can converse with it. This is where I think AI should be going. This is where humanity has been going. This is why we invented language. This is why we talk to each other. This is why we sat around in the fires and looked into the sky and made up stories and shapes in the stars. Said, wow, that looks like a lion. Well, let me tell you, son, a story about a lion. These are allegorical stories that lifted us up. You want to know what? Everything that we think is important flattens out, and it comes back to one thing, is that we are interconnected as humanity, and we're on a mission. And it isn't going to be anything that's going to stop us, even the things that we think may stop us, because we're going to overcome it. But these are one of the tools that are going to do that.
That's really incredible to think about. If I had the chance right now through technology to somehow have a conversation with or just hear about the life of a great-great-grandparent that I never had the chance to meet and know, I would take it in a heartbeat. I mean, and I would pay money for that experience and to see into their lives a little bit. And I know earlier you said that, in just a couple generations, people are forgotten. And that's just the way it is. You make an impact on those you care about, and maybe you have a legacy, especially if you're maybe successful in an industry or you're a public figure. But at the end of the day, in a couple of generations, you're forgotten about. You're right. But in a sense, AI can make it so that you do live forever. I think there was a movie I watched at some point where it's this concept of downloading your thoughts and experiences into a computer, and in that way you are immortal. So that is just crazy.
And we can do it right now. Natalie, we can do it right now with local AI. There's a program called GPT for All. You can put your context in there. I show people how to do this. We have savewisdom.org, which is the beginning of this. Savewisdom.org. We have 1,000 questions that you talk into a voice memo device, $30 device. Don't put it on your phone. And you emotionally and deeply answer these questions, because even if that's all you do, we have Natalie's voice and her deep thoughts about these 1,000 questions that's challenged us. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to cry. Everybody I've ever seen do this is going to cry, because you're facing yourself and the decisions you've made, the greatness and the tragedy. Why are these things important? Because if we did not lose wisdom, and we had 8 billion pieces of wisdom that was out there, humanity is now starting on a new mountaintop. Rather than constantly going into the valley and starting all over again, we're starting at a new mountaintop. We're going to be less susceptible and more impervious to the things that have brought us down. So it is not utopian. It's just a direction that humanity is going to be in. And if you had a conversation with just an average person from history, I'll give you this perspective. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a counselor, and I don't have a business card. But sometimes when I was counseling bands. I was on the Vans Warped Tour for 15 years. It's a punk tour and screamo and stuff, emo. A lot of people, unfortunately, I ran into, were very depressed. And I would just put them through a very simple thought experiment. I said, close your eyes. And I want to imagine your dad, whether you hate your dad or love your dad or you never met him, holding you up. And then I want you to imagine, even if you never met him, your granddad holding your dad up. I want to keep going back further and further until you can't even imagine all these people that are holding you up for this moment. You are alive because of every one of those people and all of the things that they went through, whether you liked it, hate it, loved it, whatever, they sacrificed to get you here. I think if you're reminded of that at the moments that you're at the dark night of the soul, when you think, oh man, it's time for me to leave, nobody cares. No, guess what? Somebody actually sacrificed. If we go further back in time and had a conversation with an AI that was your great grandparent from, say, the 1400s or the 10s or pre-BC, somebody pretty much died for you to make sure that you're here right now. That puts a lot of stuff on your shoulders, yes, but it also makes you realize just how fortunate you are that you actually woke up. And I think those are vitally important when we're trying to beat each other over the head over some ridiculousness. And also on the other side of people who are trying to play the power. You know, people assume places of power and they're saying, you know, I'm better off. Well, at the end of the day, you aren't. And these things help remind you of that. But I think that's what AI is going to do. It's a grand mirror reflecting back humanity. We can go hours into what this really means, but that's the empowerment of it.
I could talk to you for hours. I want to have you back on the show. Before we leave, I do want to ask you sort of like a news you can use question, because we are seeing more of these, AI scams pop up. I've had it happen to people I know in my industry or my former industry, where someone used their voice and it sounded realistic, called a family member to extort money, to make threats. I think that, as the technology improves, we're going to see that more and more. Can you just share a little bit about today? How can people best protect themselves in a situation where they could be impersonated, their voice could be taken, videos could be made of them online, and it could appear so real? What should people do?
Natalie, in very important question. Simple, a family password, a password that only somebody within the family knows. And you might want to rotate them. Make it simple, make it fun, make it relatable. Don't use pets. Don't use the things that people would normally do. Maybe some kind of weird quirk. Maybe grandpa farts a lot. I don't know if that's off color, but grandpa farts. Something. I happen to know somebody who uses that as a password because they did get a call, and they asked what grandpa does a lot. And they had no answer. And I do this also on AI robocalls. I just ask, what time of day is it? What time of day is it where you are? What's the weather like? And they don't have an automatic response a lot of times because they don't have concepts. And so, and in visual things, I have to say this. There are visual cues that you can use. There's visual cues that I use in this particular video, for example, that will 100% tell me if anybody ever used this video for an AI deepfake. And I'm challenged on how I put that out there without, it won't make it impossible for me to use, but it will make it harder. All I would say is you want to constantly do things that mix things up but are similar. Is the best way I could say when you're recording video. It's hard to do that ex post facto if you got thousands of hours of video. But when it comes to deep personal relationships, you need code words. You need even layers of passwords, and that would have saved quite a few $1 million of people with the Grandma, I need money. I'm stuck in the road calls that are taking place from primarily the context people put out on Instagram and Facebook is kind of where they're getting it from. If anybody ever put out audio, you and I are potential targets because our voices are out there in a personage.
Right.
And so, yeah, passwords. It's the easiest way to do it.
Brian, thank you so, so much. Just such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm going to have
Thank
you
you.
back on because there are so many things I still want to cover with you. I'm going to have all of your information and links in the show notes. So I hope everyone checks out your work as well as your Twitter page. Brian, thank you so much.
Natalie, thank you. It's such an honor. And I'll come in here anytime and hang out with you. It's been a pleasure.
Can't wait. Thank you so much for watching the video version of this show. I really want to hear from you. If you have suggestions or guest recommendations, you can email me at natalie@talkingbitcoin.com. Please subscribe if you want more content, and I'll see you next time.